impactful decisions in the end game, but at the end of the day, he found the right moves when it mattered.
Yep.
Okay, and a b6 Sicilian. I think it's called the Katalimov variation. Not something you see every day.
No, certainly not. Interesting choice by Nihal, who had, he's been choosing different openings, shall we say, after his game one disaster.
Yeah, and there used to be the way I found out about this opening was that this still exists. It's like a 20-volume series called SOS Secrets of Opening Surprises. And, some of those, it was basically a series of articles in every week by various GMs and IMs on very offbeat weapons. And I'm talking like E4, E6, E5.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was the B6 Sicilian, named after Russian international master Boris Katalimov. So not a terrible line, and not that easy for white to prove a big advantage. As I think we can see here, I feel like Nihal's getting an interesting, unbalanced kind of position, although this E5 pawn would be making me very uncomfortable if I were playing black here.
Are you thinking more E6, bishop E7, and maybe castle F6, or more G6, bishop G7?
Well, I guess we just got the answer. I agree with E6 because I feel like castling quickly should be a priority here for black.
Right.
And then getting stuff started on the queen side, rook C8. If the queen ever moves from D2, queen A5.
Yep, I think this bishop on C6, it really reminds me of a Taimanov Sicilian. When you get this like Thor on C6 rather, it just guards everything. It's on the diagonal, and you can really never get it out of there. I think that this is a great position for Nihal.
Oh yeah, no, this is everything that you could ask for and more, and a time advantage to boot. Queen F2, Wesley potentially aiming for something like bishop C5, but more likely getting the queen ready to jump into the king side after black castles.
Right. Yeah, the thing is, when you look at the position, you know that long castle is not happening for black. So if you're planning anything here, I think as white, you can chuck the move H4, H5 in, knowing that it's going to be useful for your attack later.
Right. F4 by Wesley solidifying the E5, the all-important E5 pawn. And if you put this Thor on D5 prematurely, white could very well snap it off the board. And in fact, he will in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Wouldn't even calculate that. Just take bishop D3 and white wins.
That's a Russian schoolboy move if I've ever seen one.
Uh-huh.
And so queen B7, one of the ideas of which is to reinforce that bishop once it lands on D5. But there's no hurry. It's not like you have to play bishop D5 now. You could play rook C8 first, improve the position, develop the king side.
Mm-hmm. As black, I'm really used to like either G6 or leaving the queen on B8 so that the move F5 is stopped. As white, I don't know why I'm not playing F5 here.
Yeah, I think Wesley has to get the engine running on the king side. He goes G4, so he might also be going for simplification with bishop G2. And in an endgame, I would be a little bit concerned to have that D7 pawn, which is being clamped down upon by the E5 pawn. Mm-hmm. White might double on the D file, and things might get a little annoying.
Right, and after bishop G2, you do have the option as black to sort of leave things as they are and say, look, if you want to take my bishop, then I might play potentially D takes C6 and get rid of that pawn you just mentioned.
Right. Yeah, so the question here, does Nihal keep the tension with bishop E7, H5? Ooh.
G6.
Now he can go G6. Yeah, stopping F5 for all eternity.
Yeah, if you don't play G6 here as black, then that's not the spirit of the position. It's all wrong.
And Wesley's definitely just looking at the D7 pawn. He's saying, I don't care about F5. I am going, all cylinders firing on that D7 pawn. I'm going to double on the D file, maybe even triple. Let's see if that pans out for him.
This is a very solid game here. Bishop E7 looks all but likely. Black's going to probably go bishop E7, B4, castle, and, white's plan is writing its own script pretty obviously here as the D7 pawn is in its sights. He wants to go rook G to D1, but he's going to have to clarify the situation with the bishops. He's probably going to have to take
Come on. Stop worrying about bishops and minor pieces. Come on.
Base concerns.
Right. These trifles are not this is not the right place for them. Minor pieces. Yeah. And Wesley apparently is doing the same despicable thing, just not blundering his minor piece. Okay, now rook gd1. Is white actually threatening rook takes d7? Maybe, maybe not, because of course black could play queen takes d7 and you get 2 rooks for a queen. But if Nihal is worried, he can play rook c7, which he just did.
Is he threatening rook d7? Tune in for the answer. Maybe
Right.
or maybe not. You heard it here first.
You will find out on next week's edition of Speed Chess Championship.
We'll let you know in the next semifinal match what the answer was.
Queen d2 here would be my instinct, just to try to prevent black from castling. I think the battle is sort of revolving around that. Because, black can castle and triple on the c file. Let's not forget that white's king is still in the crosshairs of all of black's pieces.
Yeah, that's a good point.
C3.
I mean, I think you're castling as black. Take that opportunity, right?
I agree.
Do you think that he wants to play a3 as white? That feels like a Wesley move, and maybe why Nihal played a3.
Yep,
he didn't want that solid position.
The best kind of antidote. I really like the way Nihal's playing this game. This is a chance for him. If he can win this game, equalize the match going into the halftime break, that would be a big, big confidence boost, especially because he played another unique opening. This one worked out for him, and you want to capitalize on those opportunities.
Yep, and that black king completely safe. The pawn structure, I know it's a long ways away, but we just had a bishop endgame, same colors. Take every piece off the board, and maybe you start to look at some of these pawns like a3, big weakness. b4 could be played, and you win that pawn in an endgame. All of white's kingside pawns, all on dark squares as well. So chances for both sides.
That's a great point, and I think Wesley's on the same page, trying to get that queen trade. Nihal could step back with queen c7, although that's not a move you generally love to play. Queen a6 also deserves attention. Plays it.
Yeah, Nihal,
very tense.
He's definitely playing for something here. Another thing you can do with black that it might look a little strange, but just king f8, king e8, and use your king to defend the d pawn. It's relatively safe there as well.
Everyone's got to work. It's an all hands on deck effort.
Getting close.
Of course, rook takes d7 is basically unthinkable. If what black crashes through along the c file, it's curtains, especially given that pawn on a3.
Yeah.
Bishop f8. That's an interesting move because.
Yeah, it's just he doesn't want the pawn, or rather the bishop, to be hanging. So he might want to play rook d7, but then bishop on f8 is just sort of tucked away. And I think there's like a weird outside chance where the g7 a1 diagonal opens up and black goes for something like d5, sacks a pawn just to open up that diagonal.
That's a great point. And I think such positions are difficult to play precisely. And black will be praying for the opening of the diagonal, but they are difficult to play because you have to balance the short-term and the long-term considerations. You have to position your pieces in such a way that if the center opens up, if the c file opens up, you're equipped for whatever comes. But at the same time, you can't ignore what's happening at this very moment. You have to keep d7 protected, and white has to keep c3 protected, both of which you see on the board right now.
Yeah, I think he's getting real consideration to move like d5 next. If pawn takes, then rook c to d7, and you get this plan of getting out. I don't think it works just now, but I think that he's always going to tease that plan.
No, for sure, that has to be calculated, but Nihal is burning a lot of clock here, and imperceptibly, Wesley is now ahead by 30 seconds and change. This could get a little bit concerning if the position indeed opens up.
Wesley, two things: showing that he wants to play on with bishop d4, but also showing that he's got a 1-bar connection from what I'm seeing there.
Yeah. So. And a very alert response by Nihal. Bishop c5, immediately getting rid of this bishop, which is, of course, such a valuable defender of the c-pawn.
Ooh, that looks like a fantastic transition for black. Now you hide the king on g7, and as long as you keep queens on the board, I think white has great chances, or rather, black has great chances.
Just don't go queen a5 because of b4.
Oops.
And it might very well be that black has to trade queens here with queen a8, because if you go queen a7, you walk into this, although maybe there's rook takes c3, queen takes c3, queen takes d7. Oh my goodness.
What a line.
Instead, rook c6 played, and a pair of rooks are off the board as well.
So queen c8, queen d3, or rook d3, I guess. But yeah, queen d3, rook takes c3 is a funny position. Like
Yeah, rook
both
d8,
guys doing the
d7.
same thing.
Yeah, very much in Wesley's style to bring the rook back. And now white is up a pawn, but that pressure down the c file has not really diminished.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's why the Ebel bar is still showing equality. Hard for white to make progress here.
Yeah, you can play king d2, you can play queen e4, but I feel like truly if black sits there and does quote unquote nothing, there should be a way to do it. Watch out for queen d8, rook takes c3. It's a classic trap you might fall for trying to get the queens off.
Absolutely. Same with queen d7. Wesley could consider trying to evacuate his king, but that would really be playing with fire.
Yeah. Right. And if black gets a hold of that h pawn, like, you know, forget everything else, but let's just say queen f2 takes h4, that h pawn from h5 is very, very fast.
Oh, yeah. It's just dashing up the board. Queen d8 was allowed by Nihal. Now queen f6. And the idea for black is to infiltrate g2 at the right moment, potentially deliver perpetual. 13 seconds now for Wesley. White could get mated here as well. White could absolutely get mated here if he's not careful.
Unfortunately, I think that if you ever go to the c file like c1, you're just getting rook c3 checked, and it's not a good way to run that king out of the position.
Indeed, and I think a very fair result. That was a well-played game. So